Have you ever had a game sitting in your backlog that you know you'd absolutely love, yet for whatever reason you just haven't played it? For me, that game is Dusk. Dusk is an old school first person shooter that released in 2018, but I've had my eye on this game since its alpha back in 2016. The reason Dusk had piqued my interest so early on is because it tapped into my personal nostalgia as I grew up playing Quake, Doom, Wolfenstein, Heretic, and Blood, to name a few, and Dusk looked like the perfect love letter to that era in gaming. However, because the game released episodically, I decided to hold off on picking the game up until all 3 episodes had released, and then I sort of just forgot about it. That was until my mate infamous Sir Hellfire made a video on Dusk earlier this year, and not only made me remember this game's existence, but also made me go out and pick this game up immediately. That video was in June though, so why did it take me so long to finally play the game myself? Well, I was waiting for the spooky season to start and thought Dusk would be the perfect game to ease me into playing some horror games. I mean, how scary could Dusk really be? Yeah, I was wrong. In Dusk, we play as Dusk Dude, or the Intruder, a treasure hunter who is visiting the fictional town of Dusk after hearing rumors of hidden treasures within the town. This treasure hunt goes bad quickly though, as Dusk Dude is captured by the townspeople for intruding and taken to a secluded farmhouse, propped up onto some meat hooks and ready for execution. This is when we take control of Dusk Dude, save ourselves from death's row, and continue on our hunt for treasure. It's clear something isn't right with this rural Pennsylvania town. It's infested with cultists wielding chainsaws and practicing magic, demonic goats, possessed scarecrows, and the further along you get and the more reality begins to shift, the more hellish the foes you'll encounter become. It is no coincidence that Dusk Dude has found himself in the town of Dusk though. No. This journey of fighting off creatures straight from nightmares has been in essence a path to recruitment. A journey to see if we are worthy, as we see by the game's finale. The man whose voice we have heard throughout the game, the one that begins taunting and mocking us, but ends up encouraging our destruction, is now in front of us. The leader of this cult, Jacob. Not a very intimidating title, but okay. Dusk Dude is Jacob's final test of worthiness, and a test he ultimately fails, and so we are left to proceed onto our final test, facing off against a god. We prove to this god that we are worthy, and so it bestows its power upon us, a power that leaves us stranded until we are needed again, because one must always reign beneath dusk. And that's the story for Dusk. Short and sweet for once. The story for Dusk is incredibly interesting, which is something I really didn't expect going in. All you really know in the beginning is you've been captured by crazed cultists and are about to be killed for entering the town. As I've stated in my Blasphemous video, if you do anything involving cultists or the occult, you've hooked me. And it's because of this premise that I spent so much time in the first episode just trying to figure out, well, what the hell is going on? This dark, booming voice is taunting us. There are messages trying to warn us of our impending doom, but yet no matter how much I looked and searched, you have to progress further to find the answers. The story is just so much fun to try and figure out for yourself, and that's because a lot of the game's storytelling is done through the environments and seemingly throwaway lines of dialogue. And so if you are paying attention, you will get those aha moments, which is always a great feeling. I'm not saying Dusk is going to win any awards for its story, but I do think it's an important piece of the overall puzzle that only makes you more interested in killing anything and everything that gets in your way to see what could possibly await you by the end. Alright, it's time to get to the meat and potatoes of Dusk, which is the gameplay. There is 5 difficulty options for the player to choose from, and it doesn't just affect how much damage the enemies do. See, the most important lesson you can learn in Dusk is speed, and depending on the difficulty option you choose, the faster or slower the game will become. This flexibility in difficulty makes Dusk a game I can recommend to players of any skill range, even so much that if you haven't played a game like this ever before, that Dusk would make for a great introduction into the genre. Now, all my opinions on the gameplay come from playing the game on both I Can Take It or normal and Será Miedo, the second hardest difficulty, because, well, in Dusk may you die in one hit and I still wanted to enjoy myself. Personally, I found the best blend of difficulty and fun was on Será Miedo, as I've played a good share of Twitch shooters, and the faster I have to zig and zag around enemies, the more at home I feel. But again, I'm not going to judge anyone for playing the game in whichever way they please. Enough about difficulty though, and let's talk about the actual gameplay. The combat for Dusk is a great time, though it's not because the weapons are anything special. It's not that there's anything wrong with the weapons, but they are pretty stock standard. You know, pistols, shotguns, assault rifles, and rocket launchers. And you get all of these weapons pretty quickly in each episode, so you get a lot of time to work out what weapons work best for you. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of these weapons, and they actually have a great balance of never feeling useless. Even the sickles, a weapon that is not a big damage dealer, has its uses in deflecting shots back at enemies, which makes sure you never forget about them. Some weapons do have priority over others, obviously. The rivet gun, hunting rifle, and sawed-off shotgun usually made pretty regular rotation for me, but the crossbow should also get an honourable mention along with the dual lever action shotguns that are a great choice for weaker enemies. All the weapons are a good time to use, which is important, and you're going to need to know how these weapons function and their damage output if you're going to survive each mission. The movement and speed of Dusk is where the enemies do come into the picture. There is a great drip feed of new enemies being introduced constantly that always keeps you on your toes. You begin the game with just a few enemies to worry about: mages, chainsaw wielding maniacs, and demonic goats. And as the game progresses, you'll just have more and more you need to deal with at once. Enemies like possessed scarecrows, ghostly maidens, possessed soldiers, scientists, cyborgs, welders, at least on the tame side, before the nightmares come into play with the Wendigo, Bone Monk, Priestesses, Bone Balls, and an enemy type known only as Horror. Again, these enemies are all introduced at a great frequency, so you really get to learn what each enemy does, how much damage they do, how much damage they take to go down, and even what noises you need to listen out for to prepare yourself properly. These enemies alone aren't the issue for your precious health bar though. It's the mass amount of them ready for you all at once. This is where knowledge of your weapons, knowledge of the enemies, and knowledge of the movement all comes together into one fast-paced masterpiece of gameplay. The movement is what impressed me the most about Dusk. It is so fluent and natural, and that's thanks to the amount of control you have mid-air, which if you're barely touching the ground due to bunny hopping, like you should, is vitally important. You can dodge and weave around enemies and bullets with ease. The speed never feels like you need to slow it down, and it is just so satisfying to be moving at high speeds, picking off enemies one by one until only you remain. It's not always these massive battles in open spaces though, and the game does slow down for the indoor areas or when the game is feeling particularly spooky. As much as these moments made my heart jump, I really did appreciate them mixing things up in regards to the gameplay and vice versa. I appreciated the massive battles after sections of watching your corners and listening to this for too long. In terms of enemies that always gave me a hard time though, it's rats. I don't know what it is about these damn rats, but I could never get a consistent shot off on them, and it resulted in me taking a lot of dumb damage. So yeah, I loved the ratacombs. The level design is also another highlight, and that's because it's a lot of fun to think outside the box. This door needs a key, how about I go in through the window? There are so many ways to go about progressing through the missions that are a lot of fun to see if they work, and that's because they never get you stuck. The levels progress as per usual. You can always go forward and continue no matter if you don't pick up a key or something. And through this way of thinking is how I found a lot of the game's secrets, which are more than plentiful, and you actually want to try and find them. Looking for secrets or Easter eggs is a lot of fun, and you do need to have a keen eye to find all of them. Whether that be out of place textures, grates to, again, thinking outside the box and maybe getting on top of a maze and getting somewhere you couldn't access without being there. It's worth looking for these secrets even if most of the time it's just ammo. Even that is worth looking for. Searching for secrets only adds to the game's replayability. I wanted to find all the secrets. I wanted to try speedrunning. I wanted to do better after looking back, sometimes taking silly damage or wasting ammo, or trying to go through levels peacefully. There are so many reasons I wanted to play these levels over and over again, and it feels fresh and different each time. Dusk also has some bosses, and while some are a great laugh,
What now? Good man. Here, kill me. Now. Come on. What now?
with the rocket launcher or the best weapon in the game, soap, they do sort of just melt. The best boss is probably Jacob, just because he moves around as quickly as you do, and he will melt you right back. Some bosses do repeat though, and it's just not the game's strength. Not bad and still a good time, but not the highlight of the experience. When you tie the gameplay package together though, Dusk is just an all-in-all good time, and the gameplay pays great homage to an era in the FPS genre that I grew up with. Dusk's visuals grabbed my attention right from the pre-alpha, and it's because if you were to look into my memories of me playing Doom, Quake, Blood, Heretic, I mean just pick one, if you were to look into my memories of any of these games, they'd look a lot like Dusk. In reality, I know this isn't true, but as I said with the gameplay, it pays such an incredible homage to the visuals for the time, and depending on how retro you want to go, you can make it happen. Pixelate the game to your heart's desire, use retro colors, remove some effects, and Dusk can really look like you're playing a game from the 90s. And it's great that the game has so much customization. Now personally, I stuck with no pixelization and made the colors vivid, and to me, that was just right. But it is really up to you, and it's because of the visual customization that Dusk really can feel like mine and your experiences may have been completely different. Maybe you went old school or wanted to up the horror, make the game feel like it's on the Game Boy. It's all up to you, and it's really awesome to see this much thought go into the visual options. In regards to the enemies, they really do stand out. You immediately know what something is just from a glance. This is important because most of the fights in the game, you'll only get quick glimpses of enemies as you frantically bunny hop around, and having each enemy be so easily identifiable whilst also looking badass is pretty special. As for the levels themselves, bearing in mind my personal visual decisions, this game really does just make you stop and look around from time to time. In particular, for me, I loved the look of the level Blasphemy. in the last episode. It's just this smack in the face of red. It feels like you're entering something very unholy, and does give off that, oh, I shouldn't be here aesthetic that made it so interesting for me to be a part of. The episodes do stick to visual themes though. The foothills is sort of a little bit country, farmhouses, fields, and small communal areas. Then we start to see more industrial areas in the facilities like labs, factories, military bases, and machinery, and in the nameless city, all bets are off. You have dead architecture, hellscapes, and dreamlike areas. I do think the Nameless City is the most intriguing visual episode, but that's taking nothing away from the more grounded levels because they do also have those moments of wow about them, like the small church with a dark orange sunset in the woods, or being inside this massive machine. It is all so damn great to explore. The soundtrack and sound design for Dusk is seriously top tier. Andrew Hulshult absolutely nailed Dusk's sound as it perfectly reflects both the badass and the crap your pants moments.
Embrace the darkness.
In terms of the badass moments though, I mean, this music makes you want to go fast, want to absolutely decimate your enemies. You can have terrible encounters as this music blares as well, and it almost doesn't matter because with the music you always feel like you can just start destroying these enemies, and it's great. The standout moments in the sound design though for me was when the game turns into horror. Hearing the Wendigo breathing, getting closer and closer, and looking out for footsteps, the horror and that sporadic breathing and scream upon being caught, it's moments in the sound design when accompanied by the visuals that draw you closer and closer to the screen, even though you know you're basically about to be jumped, but you can't help but try and find what is making that noise. This is most effective in the dark rooms, no flashlight sort of scenarios, but even just the cries of the cyborg can get to you because you know how dangerous they are, or the priestess's shrieks. Each enemy, especially the more hellish ones, have a very unique sound that you best learn quick or else they'll get you every time. The sound and visuals have a great yin and yang chemistry. They support the feel a situation is trying to achieve with such ease, and I'll be honest, if the sound wasn't as good as it is, the horror elements wouldn't have gotten to me time and time again. Dusk can genuinely get to you, especially if you're a night owl like myself. I even had a moment where I couldn't even tell if I had my headset on or not. I thought these noises were in my house. When Dusk wants to go horror, it does. But equally, as soon as the game wants you to feel as badass as humanly possible, it does. Here we go again. I can't seem to get through these So I Finally Played videos without just absolutely kicking myself that it took me so long to get around to playing these games. But Dusk is yet another game I wish I played sooner. It really is just such a blast from the past and yet succeeds at feeling totally unique. The story is intriguing, the gameplay is some of the most fun I've had in an FPS in some time, the visuals are a nostalgic wet dream, and the sound design and soundtrack are seriously top tier. I've been listening to the soundtrack on Spotify while I play other games. I really do enjoy it that much. Here's how I can show you how much I enjoyed Dusk. The campaign probably takes roughly 5 hours or so, and this is my final playtime. I seriously couldn't get enough. I enjoyed it so much I went out and picked up some more retro style shooters like Devil Daggers and a game that recently released in Crossbow, Blood Knight, and I'm looking forward to picking up some more. I'm in that Twitch shooter mindset now. If you haven't played Dusk yet and you like what you've seen here, go and give the game a shot. Because the longer you wait, the more you'll be kicking yourself that you didn't do it sooner.